Hey, this is Jack, and this video is called 4 Powerful Ways to Stop Attracting Emotionally Unavailable Men. So buckle up. I've got 4, I think you'll find empowering points to share with you. And I want you also to stay to the end of this video because I'm gonna bonus you an extra point, which I think might have you think about this whole question differently anyway. So let's get into this. The first powerful thing that you can do to stop attracting emotionally unavailable men is notice structural availability. Notice structural availability. So that's a Jackism, right? That's a fancy phrase. But what I mean by structural availability is in an objective way, as much as any of us can muster our own objectivity, when we're in a situation looking at someone and thinking, would I want to date this person? But it's easier, by the way, to be objective in the earlier stages, right? Before you've got too much invested, too much on the line, right? So that very early part of dating is a good opportunity for you to check yourself and to come into objectivity. And I want you to bring your objectivity to this question of structural availability. Is this person structurally available for a relationship, right? Are they single, right? Or are they nearing singleness, right? If they've been coming out of a relationship or partnership. And generally, if you can, I would invite you to wait until they are single, right? So sometimes you can say, hey, I really like you, but I'm noticing right now you're still kind of bound up in that previous thing. Why don't you sort that out and then give me a call, right? And typically the reason you're not going to do that is because part of you is going to fear losing the connection, and that is a real risk. It just might be a much smaller risk in terms of your overall emotional investment than is the risk of you starting to try and put energy and investment where it can't actually go somewhere, right? So structural availability is, does the person want a relationship, right? So these, by the way, these are what? They're impersonal to you. They're impersonal to you. They're not about you, right? Whether they are done with their ex or still figuring things out, that's actually not about you. Whether they want to be in a relationship, irrespective of you or anyone else, that's not about you, right? So we get a little bit better at spotting what is impersonal to us and being able to do that more quickly. So first things, check for structural availability. Now, second thing, this is where it becomes a little bit more personal. What is this person's availability to you? What is this person's availability to you? And what I mean by that is, we want both of these conditions in place. So number one, that they're actually available for a relationship and they want one. And two, that they are available to you, that their heart is available to you. It doesn't mean that their heart is committed to you, right? That might come down the line. But there's an availability, right? Their heart isn't tied up with an imagined relationship, with their ex, with someone they've always wanted to be in a relationship with but haven't been able to. Or that they, perhaps have someone in their field that's like supposedly is a friend, but actually there's more going on, right? Or there's some other woman is still sleeping on their couch for whatever reasons, right? I've seen all sorts of variations of this. And life has unique and bizarre circumstances, right? So none of this is coming from judgment. It's actually about you looking after you, right? So if he is not available to you, right, as you are in the course of getting to know him, right? If he's not available to have a heart connection with you, that might feel really difficult to come to terms with, right? It's going to probably feel like rejection, might feel like massive rejection, might feel like disappointment, hurt, sadness. There's lots of things that can be difficult. And it's, I spend a lot of time when we do group programs, we work a lot around rejection because this fear of rejection thing is real. However, it doesn't have to be insurmountable, right? And like lots of things in life, you go to the gym, right? It gets a little bit easier. Anything that you practice, foreign language, gets a bit easier. It's a similar thing. The more you turn to your rejection, right? If you just wanted to give yourself a gift in your life right now, you could work on relaxing your fear of rejection because it is relaxable, right? The old one in you had an issue with rejection because, being rejected in the full way of being rejected, like abandoned as a child is obviously life-threatening. But you being rejected by a guy, feeling that experience, but not also amping it up, right? Rejection becomes much bigger than it needs to be because we layer in story and we layer in negative self-belief, right? So if you could actually be with, oh, gosh, I notice for whatever reason, and actually we don't always need to know the reason, right? The mind wants to know the reason, but actually just noticing what's true is even more important than understanding why it's the case. So noticing that this guy isn't really available to you, right? He's not really looking to cultivate a heart connection with you, or he's not looking to have something that is exclusive with you. Being with that rejection and actually just noticing, well, that's a fact of life right now. That isn't actually about me being wrong, bad, shameful, or any of the other things that the rejection complex within you is going to want to go to, right? This is actually about, this is not the relationship that the universe is supporting right now, right? So it's above your pay grade. Right, and I don't just say that as some sort of convenient mechanism to like get ourselves off the hook. If we've got something to feel, we need to feel it. But actually, a lot of you are going to be too responsible here, right? You're going to make it more personal and more about you. It's personal to you in the sense that, if I go into the clothes store and I try on an items of men's clothing and it's small, it's probably not going to fit me, right? So it's personal to me. Another guy might try it on and it's a great fit. But it's not personal to me in the sense that it makes me a bad person, right? And if someone isn't interested in pursuing a relationship with you, it absolutely does not make you a bad person. It is normally because either, back to one, they're not structurally available, or two, the right connection for them in this moment isn't actually with you. And it may never be with you, or it may not be in this season. And learning how to hold that with a little less heaviness, right? Like that not every time you move into wanting to connect with someone that your heart is so exposed and vulnerable and on your sleeve that the moment something looks like rejection, it's somewhat devastating to you, right? I have compassion for that. That's a hard experience, and we need to start to dial down the way that you experience that, which is by practicing turning towards these micro rejections and noticing, you know what, it's actually okay. And what, I move through it much quicker if I don't have my inner critic, my rejection complex. I'm not going to get into it today, but there's a thing called the rejection object relation that often sits in the background. Basically means rejection is a thing for you. You have a wound around rejection. Hey, I have a wound around rejection. Probably many of us do. So again, I'm not saying this judgmentally. I'm saying it compassionately because I want you not to have the experience that when you realize for whatever reason that this guy isn't available to you, you can actually be in your adult and be okay with it. You may have to metabolize difficult feelings. That is part of being an adult, but it doesn't need to devastate you, and it doesn't need to erode at your sense of value, worth, and self-esteem, right? This is the equivalent of, if I go into McDonald's and say, hey, can I buy a luxury car? I can't do that, right? It's just not available. Now, I could try and protest and get them to change the menu. Say, McDonald's, I've always thought you could be a leader in luxury cars. Strange example. But it's just actually not available, right? So a lot of the times when someone isn't available to you, they couldn't even articulate it to you, right? They might say, well, I'm not attracted to this or that or that. Who knows if they know, right? I think there's a lot that's going on in this universe way above my pay grade and probably also above most people's pay grades. So let us be in the mystery of attraction, right? Let us be in the mystery of why two people at a similar time are both open to connecting and building a relationship together. Our job right now is just to notice, is it available? Is it on, right? And if it's not, it's to deal with it and be with it. Now you might say, well, that's convenient, Jack, yes or no, but sometimes it's not quite as clear as that. And yeah, it's true. Sometimes it isn't quite as clear, but we try and make it easier by using this like 0, 1, right? So we say, well, anything that's not a 1, we'll treat it as a 0, right? Because that's our best chance of staying sober, taking good care of ourselves. Now, a 0 could become a 1 over time, or it could become a 1 in another season. But there is also, in my experience, a fair bit of, this is actually, I believe, is a Yiddish proverb, as it begins, so it finishes. And so there is something important about that initial foundational energy. Now, there are counterexamples to this. I know people who, the very first moment they met someone, they didn't even like them. They thought, what a jerk, right? And now they're partnered with them 20 years later, or I know someone where the woman was like, look, if you want to be with me, you're actually going to have to step up your game. And I'm not even going to relate with you in this country. We need to live somewhere else, and they worked it out. So there are situations. And I'd say for the majority of situations, just really paying attention to what is that foundational dynamic when you connect with someone, and are they available to you? If you spend time with them and all the time, right, they're talking about their heartbreak for someone else, you might think, wow, that's great, they're opening up to me. but the likelihood in that situation is that you're going to be the companion, possibly companion/lover, but it's unlikely that it's going to come through as partner, right? We have these three categories: companion, lover, partner, and they have some overlapping qualities, but they also have distinct characteristics, and our job is to not make one into the other. So we've talked about availability structurally. We've talked about availability specific to you, but how to not take it so personally. The third powerful way to stop attracting emotionally unavailable men is actually about being sober, right? Now, you know, any of you that have watched this channel for a while, we sometimes say that sober is the new sexy. In this instance, I just mean be sober about who's in front of you. And again, before you get too invested, it's easier to see. So if, for instance, you're with a guy who's, I don't know, approaching 50 years old and he's never been in a committed relationship, just be sober about that. Doesn't mean to say it might not happen at some point. But if you were just looking at patterns and looking at probabilities, you might say, okay, something may need to shift in order for a relationship to form here, right? So it might just be that it's harder, and you don't want to take on the project of persuading someone, that love is the best thing and that they need it, right? It might be easier for you to partner with someone who's already realized that and is looking to be in a relationship. So we don't want you to be unconsciously in a sort of an unconscious role, trying to persuade someone why being in a relationship is a good idea with you. We generally don't want to be in that business at all, right? We don't want to have to be in the persuasion business, or let me tell you what's so great about being in a relationship with me. It's easier if someone notices at least a minimum effective dose of that off the bat, right? So sobriety is the call to noticing, if this person doesn't tend to form close emotional connections, right? Or if this person's experience of childhood, let's say, was that no one was there for them, let's have compassion for that, but let's not equate compassion with compatibility for you to step towards connection, right? There's two different things. We can have our compassion and empathy, and we all deserve it, right? We've all got difficult experiences, difficult pasts. We've all got these things, and we also want to give you the best shot of getting what it is that you want, right? And if you're still watching this video right now, my imagination is that you want an authentic connection that could move in the direction of commitment with a guy if you're a woman that dates men. So let's have you being sober about what is in front of you. If what is in front of you is someone who's a workaholic, it might mean that they're putting less energy and attention into their relationships. Now, again, someone has a right to be a workaholic. So that's not coming from judgment. That's just inviting you to notice with curiosity what is actually in front of you. And so if you're having to fight off the bat for them to have even, time to spend at all getting to know you, just be sober about that. That looks like a harder path to me, right? It might not mean that it could never work out, but it's just a harder path. So as you're going into it, you're sort of like, this is a little bit of a harder path, or a lot of a harder path. Do I want that? Is that authentically good and right for me? Maybe you going on different dates and you're sort of noticing, wow, over here it just seems like there's more flow, more availability, more curiosity. The question is whether there's something in you that is actually getting particularly attracted, even as you know that there's unavailability, right? So let's come on now to point 4. So point 4 is one reason why you might be attracted to emotional unavailability is because you have hyper emotional availability or emotional over availability, right? Sort of meaning you are so emotionally available to share and be raw and be vulnerable and connect. In our grandparents' generations, we'd say opposites attract, right? Opposites attract, right? Maybe it's a partial truth still. But you and I are moving into more of a postmodern and integral world. And so we might say something like polarities balance. So meaning if you on your side of, I'm going to get this right today, teeter-totter, yes, on your side of the seesaw, right? If you're high emotional availability, right? Life is a very emotional thing for you and you're always wanting to relay and relate through emotion. The chances are life's going to balance you out by probably giving you someone who is less emotional, right? Now, sometimes that can be a good balance, right? One of you is a bit more emotional, one of you is maybe a bit more logical. That's also probably going to give you challenges. And it might be that you actually, your soul is attracted to the emotionally unavailable guy in service of your learning the thing that they have, right? So that kind of guy may have a healthy self-interest. He may have a backbone. He may know how to take care of himself. He may be self-reliant. He may, we know this, right, in the avoidant attachment style, that the gift of the avoidant is that, yeah, I don't imagine someone else is going to take care of me. I'll take care of me, right? And there are definitely in certain ways evolutionary advantages to having that, or at least a subset of the population having that. So could it be that actually as you dial down and get a little bit more connected to yourself, the unavailability is less attractive to you because you can notice the arresting quality of the thing that maybe your soul has been hungering for? You've now given yourself some of that nutrition. And so over there, it's actually a little less intoxicating, right? Because this is also an opportunity to distinguish the kind of attraction that's intoxication and the kind of attraction which is a little bit more, yeah, this is actually what I need, right? This is actually something that's gonna feed me. So rather than running a racket on the world, sort of meaning you're going to go around criticizing how many emotionally unavailable men they are. Just a quick side note, it's not fun to be an emotionally unavailable guy, right? It's like, I don't imagine that someone says, well, you know what, I'm going to try and be emotionally unavailable because that seems like a really fulfilling way to be in this world. I don't think it happens like that. I think it's generally going to come from some form of that life being set up in that way, whether that's, intergenerational stuff, whether it's early childhood stuff, whether it's bad relationship experience, whatever it is. So we can have compassion for emotional unavailability, but we can also just notice that's not what's likely to serve you in this situation. As you dial down your own emotional availability or emotionality in a certain way, you might find that you're actually attracted to something that's possibly more wholesome for you. All right, so I'm going to recap those. So 1, is he structurally available? 2, is he available to you specifically? 3, are you being sober, right, about who's in front of you? And 4, can you reduce this polaric balance by actually noticing, is there a way that you can be more connected to yourself, more regulated in yourself? Now, here's the thing you've been waiting for. Bonus number 5. Let's get into it. So what do you even mean by emotional unavailability and emotional availability? It seems to me that this is an essentially contested concept, right? It's a fancy phrase for saying it wouldn't be easy to come to one definition that we can all agree upon. What the literature seems to suggest, I have not been deep in this, but I've heard people talk about the summaries of it, is that when a woman's talking about emotional availability, what she most actually wants is a guy that responds to her own emotions, right? So meaning that when you're feeling sad, angry, joyful, the guy is connected to you. You feel connected to him when you're in those states, right? You feel his attention and you maybe feel his receptivity. Now, if that's happening, that's great, But bear in mind that for a lot of guys, if they experience a certain kind of intense emotion ongoingly, it's more easy to kind of fry their circuitry than it might be for you, right? So for a lot of guys, there is a limit to how much they can be in that before they kind of pass a point where they need to go and kind of reset and recharge. This also is a bit different. So though you may say you really like guys who are open and vulnerable, I'm just distinguishing that a guy being open and vulnerable is a different thing than him being connected to you when you're having an emotional experience. So I'm also just inviting a little bit of self-inquiry and honesty. You get to want whatever you want, right? But when you're talking about a guy being emotionally available, it might be that there's a specific way that you want to experience being connected to him when you're having an emotional experience. And that may or may not be fulfilling to a number of guys. And there may be certain guys that are most able to meet you in that kind of experience because they have, let's just say, closer wiring to the way that you do, right? So the way that, for example, you might project emotion, you might be more of like an emotional and energetic type. We're obviously all emotional and energetic, but there's a specific way that a subset of people experience their emotion and energy, and they want to feel particularly met by the other person's emotion in that experience. And I'm just saying there's only a subset of guys for whom that's probably going to be a thing that they're going to want to do regularly and ongoing. So it's just something that in the early stages of dating, you can just sort of check. You know, do I actually feel connected in this way? Or are there some kind of expectations that I want to shift? Maybe it's okay that there are certain types of conversation or emotional intensity that I experience more with my girlfriends, right? And that's the place, at least in part, I go for some of these, right? So this may also be reducing the load-bearing expectation you have on your primary relationship, because it actually just serves you, right? What historically would have been the role of the village and the tribe in modern life, we've very much put on the relationship. And maybe that's actually, in certain ways, it's a lot, right? So I'm saying there's a guy that might be available for a relationship and a relationship with you. And in the way that you've been talking about emotional availability, that might not be his strong suit to always be super connected to you. Or, and people don't like when I say this, but you can maybe train him over time. Like maybe there's ways that he can learn, but that can also come into sync with your adjustments of your expectations, right? Where the pain happens is you have an expectation of being met in your emotional experience in a certain way. You just got to realize the vast majority of us guys are not necessarily going to be that great at it, right? We might be trainable. We might learn that a thing that we don't value is actually very valuable to you. And again, I'm talking in gross orienting generalizations. In your own relationship, this could be reversed, right? So it could be the guy who has more of this demand. But in in gross orienting generalizations, it's more likely that you will have a higher need for this. And learning to value something that you've never valued is just hard. It's just a thing, right? Just, you know this from love languages, right? Learning how to, value giving gifts if it's not something that you've ever valued, or that you put much value on it when, you don't feel incredibly loved when people give you a gift. It's just hard. That's, fancy phrase, values metabolism, learning how to value and, metabolize more values that aren't your own initial values. That's higher level development stuff. I mean, I'm all for it. It's just, you also got to realize it's a thing, it takes time, and it takes it takes a higher sustained level of motivation to learn how to do that, right? So you can help him by giving feedback about when he does this well, right? Like making him know that it's kind of valuable and meaningful to you. But there are also some surprises in the literature where, for instance, people who are more on the autistic spectrum, that actually they show up as more desirable in partnering than you may expect, because actually, let's say that this was the guy who's on the spectrum, he might have fewer needs for you to track him emotionally. And when you're being emotional, he's less likely to actually get fazed by it, right? He's actually got a greater capacity to be unfazed, and that's actually a desirable trait, right? What you don't want is that your emotions actually kind of hijack him and you end up into a conflict situation. So all of this just to say, this whole topic bears a little bit of unpacking. I want to encourage your maximum curiosity. I would love to know more about your experiences, so please leave me a comment. Is this making sense? Which of these four are hardest for you? I would love to know that as well. Are you good at noticing structural availability? Have you kidded yourself about structural availability? Has a guy presented himself as more available, but then in the fullness of time, that hasn't been true? I want to know about that experience as well. So leave me a comment. If you've liked this video, obviously, please like it. And I want to invite you to subscribe to my channel if you're new here or you haven't yet subscribed. I release videos every week on authenticity, personal growth, dating, and other such topics. And it's a great community, so I'd love to have you with us. All right, thanks you all. As always, I'm Jack. Thanks for being here.